Letting go is not easy. There's a reason there's so many books on this subject alone. It's really hard to do. And when you find yourself really emotional over a situation that happened to you or emotional over a person, that means that you're still holding on and you're refusing to let go of what happened to you. Hey there, I'm Dina and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about the subject of letting go. This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn how to do, and it's also the most impactful thing that I've ever learned. So today I'm going to be teaching you my 3 steps to letting go. It's something that you're going to have to practice over and over again. It's not a one-time thing that you're done with. But once you get this technique down, you're going to really capture the essence of letting go and be able to move forward in your life. So I wanted to start today off with explaining why letting go is so important. The thing is, you go through life, you experience things, and you tend to hold on to those experiences. And when you hold on to them, then they become part of you. They become part of your identity. You start to say things like, well, this happened to me, and that's who I am. Holding on to these experiences could be as simple as something someone said to you when you're in elementary school or in high school. Or it could be a bully experience that you had, and now you've become the person who was bullied. Or it could be a traumatic event, something that happened to you like a car accident, or a parent dying, or a breakup. We use these experiences to identify who we are. You start to use them as your personal story. I'm the person who went through this. I'm the divorcee. I'm broken because this happened to me as a child. What you'll realize is that you've been letting these stories and these events define your personality, define who you are. We cling to these experiences, and that's why they're so hard to let go, because they've become part of you. So I wanted to share a personal story with you today about how me holding on to a situation, an experience that I had, affected my life in so many ways. I went through an experience, and instead of letting it go and just letting it be something that just happened to happen to me, I held on, and it let it trigger me over and over again. Recently, I had to go through a lawsuit. I've never been through a lawsuit before, never wanted to go through a lawsuit, but here I was going through a lawsuit. I had to write all these written questions out, pages and pages long. I was grilled and questioned for hours in a deposition. I had lawyers emailing me and calling me. It was this thing that kept going on, and I felt like it was never ending. And it left me feeling triggered by anything that had to do with law. And recently, I was watching a TV show called The Lincoln Lawyer, which I had loved season 1, so I was like, I'm going to watch season 2. But as soon as I started seeing lawyers and they were talking about depositions and they were talking about these things that I had just gone through, I immediately found myself having like racing heart, chest closing and tightening up on me. I felt a little sick to my stomach. I was like, I can't watch this show. I'm being triggered. I don't want to listen to anything to do with lawyers. This is really bad. I'm having to go through it all over again. And so I turned off the show and I sat there and I was like, man, I'm really holding on to this experience. I'm having a hard time letting it go. My reaction was so big compared to this tiny stimuli of watching a show. I should be able to just watch the show and enjoy it. But instead, I had this emotional, visceral reaction to it. My experience of going through that lawsuit was something I was clinging to. It was something that happened to me, and what we're supposed to do is just experience it and let it wash over you and go away. But instead, we cling to it. I was clinging to that story of, I don't want to go through a lawsuit. I didn't like the way that made me feel. I'm someone who went through this and I don't want to ever be triggered by it ever again because it was so awful. So I was holding on to it. This is why letting go is so important. If you hold on to every traumatic thing that happens to you, all of a sudden you're being triggered all the time. Watching a show could trigger me. Hearing the word law or lawyer could trigger me. I was this person who was constantly being triggered and having all these physical reactions because I was holding on to what I went through. It's so important for you to let go of these traumatic situations, because if you don't, You're just going to be constantly re-triggered, re-experiencing them, and letting them define who you are. All right, so now I'm going to be giving you my 3 steps on how you can learn to release and let go so you're not holding on to all these traumas and wounds and you can finally be free of them. My first step is to recognize when you've been triggered. Recognize when you're feeling that big emotion, this reaction that's bigger than the event. Like that day I was watching the TV show and my chest was tightening and I had that pit in my stomach. My reaction was so much bigger than just watching a TV show. So that's how I knew, ooh, I'm holding on to this experience. I've been triggered. And that's how you can recognize when you've been triggered. When you feel this big reaction to something small that happens or some word someone says. That's how you know you have some work to do. That whatever's going on is what you need to let go of. Sometimes we aren't aware what's inside of us until we're triggered. Start to realize that being triggered is a signal for what's inside of you. It's a good thing to be triggered. You need to know what you're holding on to. Because most of the time we're unaware. We're just living our lives and being triggered all the time. So learn to recognize those triggers and see them as signals for what's inside of you. So step number 2 is to release it. After you found your trigger and whatever's inside of you still, you have to release it. That's the part of letting go that's the hardest. There's so many ways to release wounds and traumas. You really have to work on finding the way that works best for you. I'm going to list out some ways that work for me, but try them, see if it fits for you, and if it does, great, but if not, keep searching for a way. Keep finding your way of release. So some of the ways that really help me release traumatic events and experiences are dancing. I love dancing it out. There's some really great YouTube videos about somatic dancing or trauma dancing. It's just a way to release that energy out of your body. Let go of that experience, and it leaves you feeling more free. Another great way to release it is to shake it off. Literally get up and just shake it off. You know, animals in the wild, when they go through a traumatic event where they're almost killed, they'll get up and literally shake it off. Let it go. And so it's a great way of releasing that experience or that trauma and letting it go. Some other great ways are breath work, somatic breath work, if you want to look into that. I know that works for a lot of people. Or even screaming, screaming into a pillow or just screaming out loud if you can. Get that energy out of you. And one of my most favorite ways of letting go and releasing is through exercise. A great long walk can really help release that energy. Or going for a run if you're a runner, or just going to the gym and lifting weights. Connecting to your body and releasing that energy is so amazing for letting go. So I highly recommend you try all of these exercises and see which one works best for you. You should feel this big release of energy afterwards, where you feel calm and centered. You should feel this shift in your body and in your mind. And that's how you know you found the right exercise for you. So my third step is to rinse and repeat. You go through step number 1 and step number 2 over and over again. So you recognize when you've been triggered, when that wound comes up. So for me, when I saw the TV show and I recognized that, oh my gosh, I feel sick to my stomach and my chest is tightening from just watching a TV show, I recognized, hey, I'm being triggered. And then the second step is letting it go and releasing it through exercise. Whether that be breath work, shaking, screaming, going for a run, whatever works for you, use that exercise to release that energy. And then you repeat it over and over again. You'll know you're finally free of it when you're no longer triggered. So for me, when I went to watch Lincoln Lawyer and I could get through the show and I didn't feel sick to my stomach or tightness in my chest, I was just enjoying the show. I wasn't being triggered by watching anything to do with law anymore. Because why? I went through and I released it. I was no longer holding on to this experience I had. I released that energy out. I let it be free, and it was no longer part of me. It was no longer a part of my identity. So this last step is so important. Because it's in the rinse and repeat where you're doing it over and over again that you'll finally let it go. If you only do this activity once, or this breath work or the exercise once, you're not going to let it go. It takes repeating it over and over and over again till you finally have released it from your body, released it from your thoughts. It's like scraping out a bowl of yogurt. You go back in and you go back in and you go back in, and then finally you've gotten every little bit of yogurt out of that bowl. It's like that with letting go. You have to keep going back in and scraping out that yogurt until it's all gone. Lick the bowl clean, whatever you have to do. But keep rinsing and repeating this method until you're no longer triggered by that same stimuli, until you feel pretty much nothing. You can just be like, whatever. I don't have that reaction anymore. And that's such a beautiful feeling when you're no longer triggered and you know that you finally have let it go. So to recap my 3 steps into letting go, we have step number 1, recognize those triggers. It's so important to know what you have to let go of, right? So when you feel triggered, know that that's what you need to work on. Whatever's coming up, whatever reaction is bigger than the event, that's the trigger, and that's what you need to work on. And step number 2 is releasing it. Find that exercise that works for you. Whether it be breath work, somatic breath work is a great one to learn. You can go to a therapist, read a book, watch YouTube videos. You could also do screaming, shaking, dancing is one I love, or exercise. Find a way to release that energy out of your body, and you'll feel so much freer afterwards. And step number 3 is rinse and repeat. Go through steps 1 and 2 over and over and over again until you no longer feel triggered, until you no longer have that big emotional reaction to the event, to the little trigger, like me with the TV show. I had to keep releasing and releasing until I was no longer triggered by watching anything about law. That's how I knew I finally released it. So keep practicing, doing it over and over again, because it's in the practice where you finally learn to let go. All right, thank you so much for watching this video today. I truly appreciate it as always. And I really, really hope that you learn how important it is to let go. When you're walking around the world and you're triggered by so much, that's not really living. And when you're holding on to traumatic events or experiences and letting them define who you are, that's not living either. So learn to let go. Practice these steps over and over again till you finally feel free of them. So I wanted to leave you with a quote today, and it goes like this: "We fight to hold on, and we fight to let go." And I thought this was such a beautiful quote for this whole lesson of today, of letting go, because it takes just as much energy to hold on as it does to let go. So focus on letting go, because life is so much freer and so much more beautiful when you do.